Today on the Pro Church Tools Show, we're going to break down the communication techniques of Mike Todd.
2 years ago, Mike Todd was a newly appointed pastor and had only about 5,000 followers on a platform like Instagram. Today, he has almost 1 million.
So what happened? We'll talk about the specifics, the frameworks, devices, and communication techniques of Mike Todd from Transformation Church.
Well, hey there, and welcome to the Pro Church Tools Show, the show that helps your church navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm Brady Shearer, joined to my right, your left as always, it's Alex Mills.
Hello, hello.
You can subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watch the video version on YouTube at youtube.com/ProChurchTools. Make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. If this format of show is something that you like, if you subscribe, if you hit the like button, if you comment, that actually signals to the algorithm to show more church leaders this type of content. So if it's helpful for you, make sure that you hit those buttons so that it can also be helpful to other people beyond just you.
So good.
And in this episode, we are breaking down the blueprint for both preaching and ministry of one Mike Todd, the lead pastor of Transformation Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is the second episode we've done following this framework where we break down the communication devices and stylistic choices of influential pastors of churches. We did a previous one on Pastor Stephen Furtick, Elevation Church. So if you like this format, make sure to go back and watch or listen that episode. And we got a lot of feedback on that episode from Pro Church Nation saying, do more episodes like this one.
Yeah.
And I think the most popular request that we got for a leader was of Mike Todd.
Yes, we asked the people who watched that video, hey, if you want us to do more of these, let us know who you want us to do. Tons of great suggestions. We have a list of all the suggestions. But like you said, one name kind of stood out, and it's Mike Todd, which I find amazing because this time last year, we may have not even known who Mike Todd was. If you don't have Instagram and you're hearing this today, you still might not know who Mike Todd is. I'm just getting familiar with Mike Todd and the work that he's doing and his family and his church is doing at Transformation Church, like you said, in Oklahoma. Mike's story is incredible. Mike, I don't know Mike, but Mike seems incredible. So I'm really excited to chat about Mike and kind of learn about how he got to where he is and what kind of work he's engaged with at Transformation Church.
One of the coolest parts about these episodes for me is doing the prep work because I stumble across so much that I don't know.
Yeah.
And when all you're doing is observing someone from Instagram, from YouTube, you can really only learn so much about that person.
Sure.
You start to do a deep dive and you get more of a full picture of who they are and where they came from. It's fascinating. That's what this episode is for. I want to first lay out the things that I knew about Mike Todd before I dove into this episode, the observations I was making from afar, and then we'll kind of fill in the gaps. So Pastor Mike Todd, married to Natalie Todd, lead pastors of Transformation Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They were entrusted with those leadership roles in February of 2015. And they were given to them from the founding pastor of that church, Bishop Gary McIntosh. And he was the lead pastor of Transformation Church for about 15 years prior to this. Natalie and Mike, married since 2010. They've got 3 kids. Here's what's interesting. Mike Todd, as of this moment, as of this recording, not verified on Instagram, which is notable because the guy has about 1 million followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
In fact, even though I follow him, I will go into Instagram, into the search bar, type in Mike Todd.
Like, what is this about?
And Instagram doesn't even bring him up.
He's like the 6th result if you type in the right thing.
I follow him Instagram. Like, they should know. Oh, is he searching for the Mike Todd that he follows or
Yes.
some other Mike Todd that he does not follow? It's fascinating.
But like his Instagram growth has been so drastic and so fast. It's almost like Instagram hasn't had a chance to keep up.
Right.
It's like, who's Mike Todd? We don't know. This seems like a bot because who gets this many followers this fast? But that's what's happened with Mike on Instagram.
Let's talk about the come up. September 1st, 2017, Mike Todd. At I am Mike Todd, not verified as of this recording on Instagram.
Yeah.
4,533 followers on September 1st, 2017. For comparison, on September 1st, 2017, I had 7,419 followers.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 3 months later, from December 1st to December 3rd of 2017, Mike goes from 4,533 followers to 94,000. Fast forward to now, and we're about to eclipse 1 million followers.
Yeah.
So observing that from far away is something that I'm looking at in preparation for this episode, and I'm asking myself, what happened here?
Right.
How could this type of overnight burst occur? What were the driving factors? I have the answer. You will
Yes.
learn it in this episode. It is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Other things I observed about Mike Todd from afar. The dude has a shoe game like no other.
It's
upsetting
something else.
for me. As a sneakerhead myself, with many, many pairs of shoes, to see the shoes that he has on his feet while preaching, to see the shoes that he has going into church as warm-up shoes
Yeah.
before he puts on the real
I know.
shoes. It's discouraging.
And he's so unashamed about it too. Like there's that, we've talked about the Instagram account, Preachers and Sneakers before, where they basically out preachers for wearing expensive sneakers. Mike just unashamedly wears the most outrageous shoes. He's like, yeah, these are my preaching shoes. I took off these other shoes that were my warm-up shoes, and I'm probably gonna put on some cool-down shoes. Like, what's it to you?
And interestingly, in one of the interviews that I heard from him prior to the existence of Preachers and Sneakers, he talked about the way that he dresses and his style
Yeah.
and his shoes. And he's like, I don't know what to tell you. I can't afford any of these shoes. I make like no money. These were all gifts.
Yes.
Which has become kind of like a cliche statement. This was a gift
I'm sure that was a
because
gift.
of Preachers and
Yes.
Sneakers. But this statement was made prior to that account even existing.
Which is hilarious because you and I both have a friend who got a really nice pair of sneakers as a gift, and he's a pastor, and we've joked with him like, you can't wear those on stage because you're going to get ousted, and you're going to say these were a gift, and nobody is going to believe you. But
Sure, bro.
we literally know
Sure,
they were a
bro.
gift.
Mike Todd is also an outstanding drummer. Incredibly skilled.
Did you see the video of him?
Oh, I saw the video.
He's on stage with like Rich, Chad, Judah, Carl, and they're at some youth conference. I think it was the Elevation Youth Conference. And they're like, so Mike, we hear you're a drummer. And he's like, why don't you start drumming right now? And the whole crowd just goes wild. And he gets up on the drums, and he doesn't just play them.
No.
He goes, and he kind of like leans into it a little bit. Like he starts off like, yeah, pretty good. And then he goes completely off. Like I was surprised. Yeah. Amazing.
Those were the things that I knew about Mike Todd. Let's fill in the gaps. Talk about his story. How did this overnight come up take place? A lot of this information comes from an interview Mike did with Rich Wilkerson Jr. We'll make sure we link that episode in the description for this show. So if you want to watch the full version, make sure to click over to that. It is available in both podcast and video form. So Mike met his wife, Natalie, when he was 15 and she was 14. Mike is professionally trained as a music producer, which speaks to his outstanding drumming
Yes.
ability. So prior to him ever entering into ministry, he's producing for HBO, for Universal. He's traveling around the world. Him and his wife are thinking about moving to Los Angeles when his parents come to Mike and say, you can't leave because we, your parents, at the age of 50, are planting a church. Now, his parents at this time are traveling preachers as their vocation, so they can only do Sunday night services. And Mike basically says to them, this is a bad idea. You are old, too old to start a church. You're already full-time in ministry.
Yeah.
To start a Sunday night service, it just doesn't make any sense at all. The way Mike describes it, he says the only way he would have ever gotten into ministry is for God to at first use his parents to then kind of coerce him
Right.
into helping them out. We have this new Sunday night thing. We need someone to run sound. It's struggling.
Yeah.
What are you, not going to help us, son?
Yeah.
Son decides to help out. A little bit later, mom comes back to Mike and says, God has spoken to me.
Classic mom.
Classic Pentecostal charismatic mom. The Lord has spoken to me, and you are supposed to do something with the youth. The Lord has also spoken to me the name of said youth ministry.
So bad.
SOFLY, which is an acronym for Sold Out Free Life Youth. Now, I am not certain about this because I have not seen it written. I've only heard it spoken. I am convinced sold out is not spelled SOLD.
Right.
It is spelled SOUL apostrophe D.
And even worse than that, you know what their mascot was?
What was it,
A
Alex?
literal fly. Like
SOFLY.
a fly.
Because SOFLY.
Yeah. And up to this point, Mike's only job ever had been producing music.
It's true.
Do you know that?
Yeah.
Like he's only ever been a producer and now a pastor. Like that's
Right.
it.
So at this point, Mike Todd has never preached before.
Right.
He's helping his parents out with this Sunday night music.
He's inheriting a youth group with a terrible name.
I mean, at that point, he's inheriting a name. There isn't really much youth group to speak of at all.
Yes.
But he's also running Sunday morning sound for another church that is connected to his parents in some way when he's not traveling. Because music production, it brings you all around the country. When he's at home on Sunday mornings, he's helping out with both churches, Sunday morning, Sunday evening. So the way Mike Todd describes it is, he's going in to run this youth ministry, and he's about to preach for the first time. He says, this is what God told me. He's never preached, never studied, no professional training.
Yeah.
God said these 4 things. Be real, tell on yourself, love them first, and don't judge them. Those were the 4 mandates that God gives to Mike Todd when you're preaching. Don't worry about all of like being perfect and the excellent framework of a message. Just do these 4 things and you'll be fine. Fast forward 6 months, this youth group has 150 people coming compared to the church, which still only has 15 adults.
Yeah.
And the way that Mike Todd articulates this, he says, my parents were faithful over what God called them to, even though it was an incubator for something much bigger.
Yeah.
Which I think is fascinating. What a fascinating description. At the same time, like I said, Todd's helping on Sunday morning at this other church. That church is called Greenville Christian Center. By the way, I want to make sure I mention the name of the Sunday night church, which was Spirit and Truth Praise and Worship Center.
I'd say Transformation Church is probably a little bit better than that.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Todd also made mention of the logo, which he said would never see the light of day. So he's running sound on Sunday mornings. He's helping out with the youth in the evening. And he's got no budget, no leadership. Fast forward a bit more. Now he's got 500 people in the youth group.
Yeah.
So he suggests to these 2 churches, what if we merged together? Because both of you are kind of, doing your own thing, but I think we'd be a lot stronger if we come together.
Yeah.
And at first, these churches were a little bit resistant to it, but over time, they start to see what I think Mike was seeing, and they decide to come together.
Yeah.
And so now you've got this one church, and Todd is doing all of the morning churchy church things, and then in the evening, he's got like the crazy youth thing. And at this point, he gets elevated to the executive pastor position at the age of 26. Again, no experience, no professional training. And so what does he do? He starts going to every single conference that he can, learning things, picking up things on the fly, because I think he asked his pastor, like, what does an executive pastor do?
Yes.
And the lead pastor was like, I don't know, but I think that you need to do that.
Yeah.
Then his lead pastor tragically suffers a heart attack. Now, his pastor survives, but there is a recovery period of about 8 months. Well, executive pastor, you are now about to be the only public communicator. You're going to do Sunday morning to the uptight church folk. You're going to preach Sunday night to, in Todd's words, the horny teenagers.
Yes.
Wednesday night for the crowd that wants to go deeper.
Yeah.
The ones that want the real deep truth that you can't do as much of on Sundays. And then Saturdays, the more professional executive training for the internship.
Yeah.
So now, in 4 very different contexts, with no experience and no training, Mike Todd is the one that's preaching to all of these things. And he says, it's like, look, I didn't go to seminary. I went to seminary in this way. They just threw me in the deep end, and I had to figure it out as I went. Pastor recovers. He's feeling better. He's ready to start preaching again. And at this time, Mike Todd's like, look at all that we've done. I helped my parents. We developed this vibrant youth ministry. I helped them out. I helped out this Sunday morning church. We merged these 2 ministries. And we've now got significant momentum, and we're ready to move forward. And I'm now going to go get my money. I'm going to go back into the music production world. I'm going to move to LA, which was my plan before all of this happened.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to make that leap. Spoiler alert, that's not what happened. The senior leadership comes to Todd, and they're like, we don't have any real vision for the next season. And Todd's like, okay. I mean, I can help you find it. They're like, no, you have the vision.
Yeah.
He's like, what? No, I'm going to go be a music producer.
Like, it's like, my vision is to produce music.
I'm going to get paid, and I can help fund ministries through, like, my flashy music producer salary, but this isn't for me. They're like, no. Mike, you are the one that's going to take over for me in a few years. And this is the plan that gets set in motion after Mike and Natalie, like, seek God and are like, okay, maybe this is the right thing for us. This is what's really fascinating about this entire transitionary period. Bishop Gary McIntosh is a white pastor in his 60s that came to a neighborhood in Tulsa that had some very significant racial tensions dating all the way back to 1921. And I was reading some articles that were written by the journalists and newspapers within Tulsa that were like not so happy about this white pastor coming into this black neighborhood to start this church, because obviously the optics of that are not necessarily great.
Yeah.
But Bishop Gary McIntosh felt called, and so he does that. And now what you have is in 2015, an older white leader in his 60s, a boomer, handing the church to a millennial black pastor who is in his mid-20s. This is something that is almost unprecedented.
Yeah.
For that to happen just on its own, a boomer pastor in the midst of considerable growth, handing over the reins to a mid-20s lead pastor.
With no formal training.
No formal training whatsoever. Then you add in the racial difference, like the white man handing it to the black man, and that is also something that almost never happens, because as much as our churches strive to be multi-generational and multi-ethnic, rarely are we able to accomplish one of those things, much less both, in a neighborhood that had significant racial tensions for decades. So we're talking about serious, miraculous work at hand here. At this point, it's 2015. Now, remember what we said about the growth earlier with Mike Todd. It happened in 2017. So there is this 2-year period where Mike Todd takes over with his wife, Natalie. They are the now lead pastors of this church. And we don't, the regular person from, the rest of the world, we don't hear anything that's...
Pastor Mike Todd of
Exactly.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, with 4,000 followers on Instagram, just like the rest of us.
And then in 2016, 2017, as they've been doing their thing this whole time, the word that God gives to Mike Todd is, we're going into 2017, the word is stride, which basically just means you need to stay at the pace that you're at, do less, so I, God, can do more.
Which is hilarious, because when God spoke that word to him, Mike was like, I'm not sure I even really know what that means. We had to look it up, get the definition for stride, and then apply it to his context. He's like, I don't even know what God is trying to say. But he said, just lean into the pace that you're at, start saying no to some things, and let me show off and do the work here.
In all of 2017, Mike had 4 speaking engagements. Not because he was trying to make sure he's staying at home with his kids and his family. Nobody wanted him. 4 speaking engagement requests in all of 2017. In his words, the first 5 months of 2018, 650 requests. But he had this word from God, stride, take things slower, you do less, I, God, will do more. And he says at this point, he's like, I was not making any money. I have a lead pastor salary of a regular church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm not stunting on anyone at this point. These speaking engagements, because of my Instagram growth, they're big money.
Big money. And
they're saying, come to us, get big money. He's saying no, because this is the word that God gave me. And then we see this radical, crazy growth. Almost within a single quarter of the year. We're talking 5,000 Instagram followers to 100,000. And the same thing is happening in his church. More and more people are coming. And what's amazing is it's not just young black people. As Mike describes it, it's, older white people. It's younger white people. It's people from all different ethnicities and backgrounds and generations. And it's highly unusual, but he's just still doing what he's been doing this entire time, staying true to himself. And so I'm watching this interview, and I'm fascinated, and I'm waiting for the part where he's like, and the thing that we did that brought all of this massive growth was X. And people were asking him this at the same time as well. People are like, Mike, who was the marketing person that you hired?
What was your social strategy?
What was the change that you've made? And what's fascinating is, Mike's like, I was just doing the thing I'd been doing this whole time. And so I started going back to his Instagram way before this massive growth took place. And it takes a while because you got to scroll down and then you get the circle. You get to scroll down a bit more. And I went down to one of his videos that he's preaching at, newly appointed lead pastor, 2015, 2016. The Instagram video has 436 views, which for Instagram video views is not that much at all. I have 20,000 followers on Insta, and we'll get 10x that on average, no problem. You could have, 972 followers on Insta, not out of the ordinary for a church, and get 476 views. There's 0 comments. And there's Mike Todd on stage in a black leather jacket, hair, the fade as dope as it can be, as crispy as possible. Jordan 11s on his feet, preaching in the exact same attitude, demeanor, and countenance that you see on stage from him today, but the audience isn't there yet. Now, before we get into a little bit of what happened, I wanted to talk about some of the things that stood out to me as I'm listening to this story, because this whole time, I'm trying to fill in the gaps. There isn't some story that Mike has written that explains everything. There are interviews. He drops pieces of it here and there. And that Rich Wilkerson interview was the best one I found that goes through things pretty sequentially. But there are things that I was noticing that I thought were important that I wanted to make note of. So his parents come to him and say, we want to start this church. And one of the first things that he recounts saying to them is like, look, you're traveling preachers. You can only preach Sunday nights. That's going to be too much travel. Like strategically, just from a logistical standpoint, this does not seem wise. He makes a little bit of fun about the name, Spirit and Truth Praise and Worship Center. And he's like, hey, you should have seen the logo, but I'm not going to show it to you. He thinks his parents in their 50s are too old. It's too late in the game. Again, strategically, logistically, this isn't the type of thing that would generally work. When he's talking about merging the 2 churches, the Sunday morning one and the charismatic Sunday night one, he's looking at his parents' church. They're doing these Sunday night services. They're 3 hours in length. We've all been to these types of services if you grow up Pentecostal charismatic. He says they need some structure. This cannot grow with this current format. It's too long for the average person. It's not at the right time. It needs to be in the morning. He is the one that spearheads the church merger. In his early 20s, he's looking at these 2 different organizations led by people that are 50 plus, that have been doing ministry for decades. He's the one that spearheads that merger with no budget in his youth group. He teaches young people how to give, raises up 12 leaders through internship to form a leadership committee. The guy has no budget. He's teaching the hardest age group how to give, how to be a generous people. And that's where the budget comes from. He implements sermon series that his church has never done before. His formula, in his words, I was relying on the Holy Spirit and ripping everyone else off. Because he's not professionally trained. So he's looking down the street and it's like, well, it looks like they're doing sermon series. Maybe that's something that we can implement. He said, I could never be a pastor. I don't like people that much. That stood out to me because I have thought that about myself so many times. Mike Todd had in his mind what a pastor was meant to be. He saw it in his parents. This is what a pastor is supposed to be. I'm just not that into, I can't spend all day with people. I can't be a pastor because this is my view of what a pastor is, and I don't identify myself as that. And then he has that preaching blueprint. Be real, tell on yourself, love them first, don't judge them. All of these things stood out to me because what do we know about Mike? We know that he's professionally trained as a music producer in a highly competitive space, music. And we know that that has very little to do with the church world in the way that it's run. So he's coming into the ministry world with very different types of training. With a very different background and experience. And he's taking all of that strategic understanding and he's applying it to the church world. And this is unique for most pastors because most pastors are trained in exposition. They're trained in public communication. Maybe they're trained in work with individuals when it comes to light counseling or relationships, that type of thing. But when it comes to leading an organization and the strategic components that come along with that and the need for structure and vision and forecasting, evaluation, most pastors don't have that type of training. I went to Bible college. I have my degree. We didn't get any of that. And so Mike is coming at it from a very different perspective. And I think that's what gave him the ability to see all of the massive growth that he's seen because it's fascinating. His preaching blueprint is incredibly basic. Just be real, tell on yourself, love them first, don't judge them. He had almost nothing when it came to the exposition, when it came to the theological understanding, when it came to all of the things that we were trained in a Bible college. He had all the other things. And it's a fascinating just difference. And well, now look what happened.
And he used the perfect analogy because he says hey, if you look at my Instagram growth or our church growth as Transformation Church, you would probably assume, without knowing any better, that this just happened overnight. But he used the analogy of a plane taking off. He's like, planes don't take off with this much runway. It's like it requires a lot of runway to get something like that up and off the ground and for it to take flight. And he said the same thing is true here. This didn't happen overnight. We've been at this stuff for a long time, and we've used a lot of runway here. And like you said, Braid, like pointing out this kind of pragmatic approach to implementing systems and structures that are very important when it comes to leading a big group of people that often get overlooked in church spaces. Implementing this pragmatic approach to system and structures on that runway to set yourself up for success when it does take off. Because now when you have hundreds and then thousands and then tens of thousands of people belonging to some movement, you have to have those things in place first to be able to lead people well, to be able to learn how to lead a group of interns so that when you have a big influx of staff, you know how to lead that group well. Right? And so they've been doing the work. Mike Todd's been doing the work for a long time. Now we're all privy to the fruit of it. But I mean, this investigative research that we did over the last week or so has been really helpful to learn about like the actual work, the blood, the sweat, and the tears often that goes in to building a faith community that can grow in size, in measure, in influence in a local community, and then in Mike's case as well online, because the growth that they've seen on their YouTube channel, on their Instagram page has just been just out of this world. He said that he was watching his page grow by the 10,000s overnight. Like he would wake up the next morning and see 10,000 more people. They were having hundreds of YouTube views that went to hundreds of thousands of YouTube views in a week. They would post their sermons, and by the next Saturday, it would have hundreds of thousands of views. And that growth is due to the work that they put in, mostly in systems and structures to help get that plane off the runway, to use the analogy that he used.
And I love that analogy because if you are sitting in a seat on a plane and you're on the runway, you never know when you're about to take off.
Right.
All you know is that you're on the runway and you can't see how far ahead you have left. You don't know how much longer you're going to be ramping up before you take off. And I don't know if you've had this experience. I've been in planes before and I'm like, we've been like going without getting off the ground for a long time. Like,
Are we
how
gonna
long
make
is this
it?
runway? Like, I always think that. Like, are we gonna run out? Are we just gonna fall off like the edge of the cliff before we like get in the air?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with your ministry, with church, and recognizing that it's like that Bible verse that Pastor Stephen had preached on in the episode we did on Furtick's exposition of how he preaches. He's talking about Ecclesiastes. He's like, your job is to plant the seeds. And as the person that's sowing the seeds, you don't really know which ones are going to take to the ground and how the wind is going to blow and what's going to happen. All your job is to do is to plant the seeds, and then God's going to be the one that actually, brings everything together.
Yeah, and something that I appreciate about Mike Todd, and you hear in this interview that we're going to link in the description so you can watch for yourselves, or in a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that I've been exposed to of him, he's always one to bring it back to we're just relying on God here, and so it's almost like he was in the passenger seat in the plane as well, like not in the pilot seat, but in the passenger seat, and like just doing the work and on that runway and not knowing when it was going to lift off, because to expand the analogy a little bit, it's like, well, God's in the pilot seat. So like we're going to take off whenever we do, but like I'm going to keep my seatbelt on like in the meantime.
Yeah.
And that's something like a thread that's just woven through all this stuff we've heard Mike talk about is like, we did the work, but like, we were just depending on God here, like depending on the Holy Spirit. He's like, I don't know how to preach. I don't know how to do this stuff, but like, I know I've been called. I've got that word from my parents and I got that personal word. So like, I'm just going to go for it in faith, and we're seeing the fruit of it now.
So let's talk about the blueprint of what happened here. There are 5 main takeaways that I think I've observed from the Mike Todd story. And we're going to get into how he preaches in a moment, which has some fascinating insights.
Yeah.
But the blueprint of this story, 5 things that we can all take and implement, or at least just reestablish in our own ministries. Firstly, the quote that Mike Todd says, I can't be a pastor. I'm not as into people as I need to be for that.
Yeah.
And maybe we've all said that about ourselves in its own way. I can't be a pastor. I'm not, insert traditional expectation here. Or I can't lead the social media at my church. I'm not. I can't do the creative work at my church. I'm not creative enough. We have these ideas of what a person in specific ministry roles should look like. Have ideas of the skills that we would need as prerequisites to be that type of person. And then we say these almost self-fulfilling prophecies about ourselves. Oh, I could never be that. I'm not X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And I think that we need to have more people in ministry roles, lead pastors, creatives within the church, youth pastors, children's pastors, worship leaders, digital pastors that don't fit the mold of what the expectation is. There is a large group of people that is quite obvious, evidenced by the massive growth that Mike Todd and Transformation Church has seen. There's a large group of people that resonates with the way that he presents the gospel and lives out his faith in Christ. And there were not that many people before him that look like him.
Right.
That's unusual. It wasn't as popular. And so seeing someone who's young and a person of color, a black man living in the South, who's living this way, like, that is not the traditional view or the traditional look that we've come to associate with, quote unquote, evangelical Christianity or Pentecostal Christianity or charismatic Christianity. We need more people that look different than everyone else looks. And that's important because when you stay true to yourself and you don't try to be other people, you get the opportunity to reach a people group that maybe was not previously reached.
Yeah, and that takes like personal responsibility for you when you look at a certain position or an opportunity and say like, well, I don't look like that, I don't talk like that, I don't think that way, so I can't do this. It takes self-awareness from you and a measure of faith to be able to jump out and go for it, even when you think you don't fit the bill. But it ties perfectly into the next part of the blueprint is it takes older people, often older leaders, to see something in a younger person, to see something almost like prophetically in something, see something in somebody that maybe doesn't quite exist yet, call that out of them, and then pave the way for them to step into that opportunity. So in Mike's case, it was that bishop in Tulsa who was leading a growing community and who had the foresight to say like, I'm going to hand this over to you now. And you don't look like me, you don't talk like me, you don't sound like me,
You're 26 or 24,
you don't do
whatever.
things the same way I do, but like I'm going to take a step of faith towards you in my position so that you can take a step of faith towards this and I can pave that path for you to watch you grow. So there's a responsibility on both parties here. People who don't think that they can do something and older leaders who need to prophetically look into younger folk and call that out in them, like almost mine something out in them that maybe nobody knows exists yet.
Yeah, and from an outsider's perspective, we see Mike Todd with this massive influence. What we don't see is Bishop Gary McIntosh, who had served as the leader of that church for 15 years prior, and his parents, who served at this church that I had trouble even finding online when I Googled the name of it. But it's his parents and his senior leadership that were the ones that paved the way for decades, and they never saw this massive level of influence.
Yeah.
They never saw this level of growth, but to use that perfect term that Mike did, they understood or at least acknowledged the potential that their ministries were being used as incubators for what was to come.
Yeah.
And not to make this about me, but I remember my mom said this to me dozens of times growing up in the first 25 years of my life. She was like, when I was younger, I always thought that I was going to do crazy, amazing things. And I had all these goals and visions for myself. And then my health was never what I wanted it to be. And my mom has since passed away. And my health was never what I wanted it to be. And, things took place, mistakes I made. And she's like, but then I see you. She's like, and I start to think, wow, if I can give you the confidence that you need, and I can put you in the positions to succeed, maybe this has all been setup sort of thing for what you can do. And heck, hearing that as a teenager, like, oh my God, seems like a bit of a burden, Mom, settle it down a bit. But there is this truth that you can only take care of what you're entrusted with. And as strategic as Mike Todd was, and will continue to be, there's this dichotomy of you need to do as much as you can with what you have, but recognize that God's working behind the scenes and you can never truly know what's about to come. And maybe you'll spend your whole life like Mike Todd's parents, doing the right thing and doing the best you can with what you have. And you'll never see a certain type of growth. And then you'll be Mike Todd. His parents will like force you into something and you'll reluctantly take the reins, but you'll do the best you can with what you have. And you'll be taken down a different path.
Yeah.
And to be a dad here, it reminds me of Frozen 2, Alex. My daughter has seen it thrice in the first week of its release. Every movie has that moment where all hope is lost.
Sure.
Where it feels like our protagonists, they're in a difficult position. How are they going to pull themselves out of this? And there's this song that Anna, sister of Queen Elsa, sings at the end. And the song is called Do the Next Right Thing. And it's in her darkest moment where everything seems lost and she has the choice. I can abandon all hope and just throw in the towel, or I can just take the next step and just do the next right thing in front of me. And in ministry, in leading pro-church tools, in our marriages, in our relationships, in our friendships, that really is the mandate that we have. With all the information you have right now, with your understanding, as best as you can, you need to make the next right decision and do the next right thing that's in front of you right now. Because as much as we want to, we can't see the full picture. And as much as we want to forecast for the next 3, 5, 10 years, and we need to make decisions with long-term thinking in mind. Again, it's this weird dichotomy. It's this paradox that we need to do everything we can with what we have and keep making the next right decision, understanding that we'll never truly know how things are working together. And we'll never know when on December 3rd, 2017, we'll have 93,000 followers when 3 months prior, we were getting 436 views and no comments on any single video. And sometimes the growth is going to look like this stagnant line and then a hockey stick, that L straight up. Sometimes it'll look like just constant growth, bit by bit for months and months and months, and you'll never have this massive increase. But all you can do is do the next right thing.
Yeah, and there's a spiritual element of truth to all of that, right? Like the prayers we pray, like give us this day our daily bread, like Jesus in Matthew 6, where he's like, don't worry about like tomorrow. Tomorrow's got its own worries. Like here we are today. The scripture says his mercies are new every morning. It's all about like that daily reset of like, yeah, we can have goals and forecasts and all that, but like we can't get there if we don't live through tomorrow first, right? So all about taking that next right step. And it just resonates with me so much, the parables about like the seed and the sower and the harvest and the reaping. It's like some of us plant seeds and some of us water seeds and some of us get to harvest seeds, but we don't know. It's at least I found this in my own life. You don't often get to see the harvest of the things that you plant, and that means that you get to harvest things that other people have planted. And so there's a lot of tension in that. But if we just open our hearts to that and see that to be true in our own lives first, but then also in the life of our communities and the life of our leaders that we're raising up, it's like, yeah, maybe I'm planting things that somebody else is going to harvest. And that's okay because I'm harvesting things that somebody else has planted for me, right? And the scripture says that the Lord brings the harvest of it all. So it's like relying on God's timing and leaning into what we've been entrusted with for today is, I think, the key to it all.
And the inverse of that is that when we don't play our part, we jeopardize what could be happening in decades to come.
Sure.
When we don't do the next right thing, and instead we're trying to focus on something that it's not our responsibility, it's not our privilege, it's not our season. We try to focus on something that someone else is going to be needing to do in another 8 months or 8 years. We actually can jeopardize the entire trajectory of what's to come. And so that's why we need to be mindful. We need to be pragmatic and strategic and think about all the information that we have. What is the next right decision I can make?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Mike Todd's preaching style. Fascinatingly, he gets asked, in all that you communicate, you seem to resonate, Mike, with people in a unique way. What is it? And Mike says, in everything I communicate with preaching, with social, with my leadership team, when we cast vision, I have a single individual in mind. And this is a business practice that you're taught. You do any type of business training. The customer avatar, the target audience,
The hypothetical person.
the person you're trying to meet,
Yeah.
trying to reach. So Mike Todd has a name for this individual. His name is Stormy. And in Mike Todd's words, Stormy is these following things. He's culturally relevant. He's a 28-year-old dad, not married. He's obsessed with convenience. He wants a crew. his community. He desires to be a part of what is cool in culture, wants to live in the moment, what's happening right now, what's in. He's looking for peace, and he's concerned about his image. So when Mike Todd crafts a message, when Mike Todd considers how he wants to dress, when Mike Todd makes decisions for his church, he's always thinking about this single individual. He's thinking about Stormy. And will this decision enable us, empower us to reach Stormy better, or will it distance us from him? And keeping that in mind, he has this true north, this due north target in his mind, and he's doing everything he can to reach that person. And frankly, it's sometimes difficult to talk about this. I was thinking about this on the drive over. Like, if you are a person that cares about image, and we know with the rise of digital culture, we are now more image obsessed as a culture than perhaps ever before. If you are someone who cares deeply about image, and you're listening to someone speak from stage or speak online that in your mind does not care about image, you will not validate that individual's message as much as you would someone that you resonate with and looks like you aspire to be.
Right.
And we all do this. And we do this to varying degrees. So the level to which I or Mike Todd does it, you might find uncomfortable. But you have showers in the morning too. And you try to look your best when you leave the house. You try to look at least presentable. If you're gonna preach from stage, you're not gonna do it in stained sweatpants. Maybe you might not do it in a suit. Maybe you're gonna do it in jeans. But we all have a certain level of image consideration. And it's all to varying degrees. And the problem is, we look at other people and how they manage their image, whether good or bad, and then we either credit them or denigrate them based on how it matches our standard. And I don't think we should do that because it's very lacking in self-awareness and silly and does not look good on all of us. But when it comes to reaching a certain people group, you do need to look a certain way. And the key is to be yourself and not try to be someone else. And this works in both directions. So if you're Mike Todd and you grow up in a certain culture that means you've been wearing you've been wearing Jordan since you were a kid. And you've been going to the barbershop since you were a kid and you always want to look fresh. Are you supposed to then aspire to look like your white senior leadership because that's what a pastor is supposed to look like? Inversely, if you look up to these young, cool, hip pastors that come from a culture that this is truly who they are, and then you think, I need to dress a certain way to be cool like them, you're being equally untrue to yourself. And so, one, we need to stop judging everybody else because it's stupid. And then secondly, we need to be true to ourselves. Don't try to be someone else. If you are young and you dress a certain way, don't feel like you need to dress yourself up to reach a certain group because you're not being true to yourself. And then that works in the other way as well. Mike says how he dresses, how he communicates, his entire countenance keeps Stormy in mind. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay. And what this doesn't mean is that anyone who doesn't look like his hyper-targeted audience, anyone who's not a single dad of 28 gets missed. That's not what it means at all, because Mike uses the analogy of a tennis ball that's soaked in wet paint. So if I were to soak a tennis ball in wet paint and throw it at the target, even if I hit the target on the bullseye, anything like peripherally to the flight of that ball would have gotten splattered with wet paint. And that's the imagery that Mike uses. He's like, we have this target audience of this hypothetical character of Stormy, but that doesn't mean that our whole community is 28-year-old single men, right? Like people get splattered in the trajectory, and our community is diverse because of it. We've talked about it before. You can't be everything to everybody. And so in Mike's case and at Transformation Church, they know who they want to serve. They're trying to serve them. And in the wake of that, other people are getting served as well. Their community is diverse, it's multi-ethnic, it's huge, so it's working, right? So to have that image in mind is really helpful and kind of gives you permission to have a hyper-targeted audience, knowing that you're not really excluding people, but you're not trying to be everything to all people.
Imagine that tennis ball soaked in paint. To get the splatter effect, you have to throw it with a certain velocity at your hyper target. If that pitch, if that throw isn't hyper-targeted and isn't thrown at a high velocity where you're aggressively going after that single spot on the wall, the splatter never takes place. If you roll the ball on the ground because you're like, look, we're not trying to...
We're just going to be safe.
We want to reach every people. Like, is the gospel not for everyone? If you roll it on the ground and it just touches the wall, not only do you not hit the single target and then you don't get the splatter effect, you literally don't hit anything.
Yeah.
Like nothing gets hit. That paint doesn't stick on the wall where the ball rolls to and gently hits, and it definitely doesn't splatter beyond that. And this is so true. It's one of the things that churches miss, and it's a critical error because if you don't have an individual in mind that you want to reach, unfortunately, the inevitable side effect, generally, in most cases, is that you end up not reaching anyone. And how do I know that Mike Todd has had this individual in mind and he's been true to himself for all of these years before he became a household Christian pastor name? Because I went back and I watched those old videos. And what is he doing? He's preaching. He's got these 1 minute, he's doing the same type of preaching effects and techniques that we'll get into in just a moment. And he's taken a Drake song and he's ripped out the lyrics and he's using the instrumental. And it's amazing to see because I know that Mike did that himself. He did not have someone on staff to He's published the Instagram video. It's 16 by 9.
Yeah.
It's not 4 by 5 like it should be. It's not taking up as much real estate. And at the first 3 seconds, it's just the Transformation Church logo or it's the series artwork logo, which is not the best practice.
It's a bad social strategy.
Show your face, Mike. That's what I want to see, not your artwork. But what is he doing? He's doing the thing that he's always done. He knows that his target audience will hear that song and immediately think, why is, Madiba Rhythm from More Life 2017, Drake's best album, in my opinion, why is that playing underneath a pastor? And now that they're listening, they have a chance to hear the message.
Yes.
Another thing that Mike Todd does is he knows who he's trying to reach. He knows that other people will not resonate with him.
Sure.
So what does he do? Transformation Church has this amazing thing. It's called the Not Your Cup of Tea card. Think of it like a connection card. It's the opposite of a connection card. On it, there are 15 other churches in Tulsa. And it basically says, we like our music loud. And we are pretty unashamedly crazy.
These shoes are very expensive. If that offends you,
and bright.
Yes. Here's 15 other churches, address. He'll post on social. He'll tag other pastors, post their pictures, and be like, hey, if we're not for you, these people might be. So you should go and visit them. This is amazing. The anti-connection card. The deconnect card.
Let's talk about
the disconnect card. Got it. Nailed it. I found it.
Wow. It's really helpful. It's a great job. 3 individual preaching techniques that we want to highlight from Mike Todd. The first is what I call the hold me back. This is Mike Todd preaching at VU Conference, and we want to play a small clip. Take a listen.
And so what I need you to do is go back to the place where they don't know who you are yet. And I need you to serve that like you're the king now. I'm gonna step on everybody's toes, even in the balcony. Because the problem is, many of us have a burden and a passion from God, and we know we're marked by God, but we're ready for everybody to see it now. But I'm trying to tell you that you cannot develop the character that God wants you to have in front of everybody. It's His grace that many times puts you in the shadows so that you can develop what you need to be able to sustain where you are. Rich, they mad at me. Because they thought they were going to come to VU Conference and go out and do it tomorrow. But what God is saying is, will you give me the space to do the thing in you that nothing else can do in you?
So in hip hop music, you have often what's called ad libs. You have a hype man, which is basically you're rapping, you're putting down your verse and your flow.
Yeah.
And, someone in the background, sometimes you, Migos definitely made this, they put their mark on it in a unique way.
Yeah.
You're saying things in between the moments. So you drop a line, da 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 da, woo,
Yeah.
da 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 da, hey, da 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 da, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's lit.
Yeah.
La Flame.
Yes.
Oh my God. Now you can't really do that on stage. Or can you?
You could.
Look, we're looking for non-traditional people. I'm looking for a pastor to implement this.
Yeah. I can't fill volunteer positions at my church for kitchen staff, but I've got hype men lining up at the door to come and join me on stage while I'm preaching. So
Welcome Quavo and Takeoff joining us on stage today.
Or I just have one of those little iPad triggers where I trigger my own.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Nice. You're like, and that's what the Lord Jesus did on the cross. Offset. He offset the sins of you, and he took it upon himself.
And this is how long our Daniel fast is going to be. 21. We're onto something here. We need to cut this and keep this for ourselves, not publish it on the internet.
Ooh, that's the strategy we need to work on internally before sharing it with the world. It's not ready
Our
yet.
next product.
So Mike is almost doing this himself.
Yes.
And he's staying true to himself. He's staying true to his culture. There are certain things that Mike Todd does from stage that you should not.
Right.
Because you are not from this culture.
Yeah, you
It
can't.
would not be cool if you did these things. And so he'll preach something, and it's a bit of a hard word. He's like, Rich, they don't like it. They don't want to hear this today.
Yes.
And it's a fascinating like dynamic within the preaching, because it's like he'll make a statement, and then he'll almost like preach back at himself,
Right.
make another statement, preach back at himself. It's like on the in the NBA. This is where I got the name, the Hold Me Back.
Okay.
In the NBA, on the bench, this happens in a lot of sports. It's especially true in NBA because of the cultural framework.
Yeah.
So someone does something crazy.
It's a big old nasty
They
dunk.
dunk on your face.
Yeah.
Your face has been dunked on.
Yes.
And what'll happen is you'll have people on the bench and they're like outstretching their arms,
Yeah.
like, don't run on the court.
Yeah.
Don't like, you hold me
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing in Black culture where it's like you look at something funny and then you all just run off in opposite
Yes.
directions. It's amazing.
Yes.
And you can't do that on the NBA bench because if
Right.
you enter into the court,
Yeah.
you get suspended. So everyone's like, hold me back. People
Yeah.
are falling over.
Yeah.
And it's just a way to like hype
And
up.
like it's a ploy. Like no one's actually trying to run on the court. Yes.
But that's like true. And so he's taking that and it manifests itself in different ways.
Yeah.
You see something funny on your phone, you all run in opposite directions.
Yes.
On the NBA bench, you're holding each other back, you're falling over.
Yeah.
On stage, it's just you. It's one person with a spotlight.
Yes.
You got to do it to yourself.
Yeah.
I love it. You love to see it. Technique number 2, the tell on yourself. For someone who has reached such a level of influence, 1 million followers on Instagram, his YouTube channel is absolutely colossal. Mike still has a level of almost dangerous transparency that I respect in a huge way. Here's an example. On an IG story from a couple of weeks ago.
This one is not safe.
It's amazing. Mike and Natalie, husband and wife, leaving a counseling session, doing what you should be doing, working on your marriage. And
Mike doing what he should not be doing, broadcasting this exact moment to the internet.
seems like there was some conflict happening between husband and wife.
Maybe a wife was upset.
And you're doing that thing where you're filming something on your phone, and your wife's like, no, don't publish this.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah,
We've all been there.
Right, but instead of you having like 172 followers on Instagram and being relatively harmless if you post it, he's pushing 1 million strangers on the internet. Be like, oh, honey, please don't post that to 1 million people on the internet. And he's like, no, I'm going to post it.
At one point, Natalie, I know, gives him the finger.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
What does Mike do? Just puts the emoji over top of it,
Yes.
publishes it. It had been up for like a dozen plus hours.
Yeah.
So it wasn't one of those things that you publish and take down.
Right.
And then it was like the next story, and they had like went to the gym together. His wife's working out. He's filming her like while doing a workout. He's like, still mad at me? Still mad at me? The amount of abandon and, in this instance, lack of image management showed a certain level of like, again, maybe reckless transparency that I'm here for.
Right.
Because you rarely see someone with that level of influence
Sure.
just like, look, this is real. And, maybe I talked to my wife after and like, obviously he wouldn't have kept it up for a dozen plus hours if
Right.
after he had posted it, his wife would be like, please take that down.
Yeah.
Of course he would have taken it down.
But
right?
like this type of content, this type of transparency is what makes Mike lovable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we see our own humanity in what he's portraying on the internet, which is hard when you see someone who has 1 million followers. It's like, well, we exist in different worlds. It's like, no, like we go to counseling too. My wife's mad at me too. And so it's like it opens a door for us to like share the same humanity, and that's what makes him lovable online, at least for me.
Final preaching technique, know yourself and know the people you're trying to reach. I mentioned that clip of him preaching with the Drake track underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Take a listen, take a watch at what that sounds like.
You're the church, and God's asking you to complete the picture. Let your faith and your actions line up so that the picture is full and that people are able to see what God intended for the church to be. I want you to remember, because some of you are saying right now, well, I'm not a perfect person. Nobody is. In fact, the guy who started it all, who Jesus said, I'm gonna build my church on you, it was Peter. He was an imperfect guy. He messed up all the time. He was not doing everything right. He even denied Jesus 3 times when he was on the cross. But when he came back, he said, I see something in you that I can use. And if you would not hide your imperfections, but bring them to me, I'll use that and I'll build my church through you. That's the same thing I say to you this morning. Don't hide your imperfections. Bring them to God. Be the reverse church, and he will use you to complete the picture. Somebody say, complete the picture.
So this is Mike preaching in 2017. He's on a small stage. Like I said, 476 views, 0 comments. It's a 16:9
You should have
aspect
dropped
ratio.
a comment while you did all the work to scroll down there. You should have dropped a comment.
That's totally cool. When you like go back 4 years and you start commenting on people's posts, that's not weird at all.
Should have been like, hey, Mike, just doing some research into your personal life. Really, thanks for this.
Just love the Jordan 11s. Respect. It's funny, those Jordan 11s are dropping again this month.
Amazing.
They're coming back. Yeah. Not my silhouette, the Jordan 11s, more of a low top guy. I struggle with those AJ1s. I'm just so short, you know?
Yes.
High top shoes make you look even shorter.
Right.
This could be a video from 2019.
Sure.
The only difference is it has 400 views instead of 400,000.
Yeah.
But Mike is still doing his thing back then, and he was doing his thing faithfully. The prerequisite, he knew who he was, and he knew who he was trying to reach, and he was hyper-targeted on that mission. He stayed on it. This is something that we all can improve on. Our churches, our leadership here at Pro Church Tools, who are we trying to reach?
Yeah.
And let's stay hyper focused on them. And it doesn't matter if we reach 100, 1,000, or 100,000. We know what we're called to do. And maybe we are the incubator for the next great thing.
Yeah.
Maybe we are 1 day, 1 year, 1 decade away from that acceleration of growth. We don't know those things. We can't know those things. All we can do is do the next right thing. And if you don't have the person in your mind that your church is trying to reach. We did an episode recently about the 3 major hurdles that churches need to confront if they want to succeed in the next decade. And one of them was knowing your identity, because the audience is shrinking. You can't just expect to set up shop as a church and have everyone roll in, because people don't attend church in that way, especially if you want to reach those 40 and under, because they're attending church at rates that are lower than we have ever seen in the prior century. You need to know who you are, and you need to know who you're trying to reach.
Well, and this is like 2 sides of the same coin, like this coin of sense of identity. It's being aware of who you are and having a strong sense of identity of yourself, but also having a strong sense of identity of the folks you're trying to reach. And if it doesn't turn into the growth that Mike has seen, that's okay, because Mike was just faithful in who he knew he was and who God told him to serve. And we all have that opportunity wherever we're at, whatever we're doing. God has surely spoken something to each one of us to tell us who we are, our personal sense of identity, and has given us, entrusted us with an influence over a group of people, whether it's 5, 10, 500, 1,000, 100,000, it doesn't matter. But just staying faithful to that task and being that safe incubator for whatever's next. I mean, Mike is clearly in a season of like reaping what he has sown, but also reaping what others have sown. He's in like what seems like a season of harvest, but there's others of us who are in like a season of sowing and may never see that season of harvest. That doesn't mean that what we have been doing wasn't right or was wrong. No, as long as I have a clear sense of identity of who God has called me to be and who he's called me to serve, then I'm being faithful to what God has called me to do.
And let's not like play one against the other and glamorize one and denigrate the other, because when you have that level of growth, anything that grows comes with pain.
Yes.
Remember when you were a teenager? I am so tall right now, but I wasn't always this tall. I was, I'm 5'8" now. But when I was 5'2" in grade 9, and my body was like, we need to get to 5'8".
You go through growing pains.
Growing pains. Anything that grows comes with pain.
Yeah.
And so this massive harvest, like, wow, look at all this overnight growth. Like that certainly came with interpersonal conflict.
Yes.
Do you think that a 60-year-old white pastor handing over the church's leadership role to a 25-year-old black pastor with no training, do you think everyone was like, we're okay with this?
No, he lost all of his staff in that transition, and that was hard and painful, and they had to work through that. So sure, we see the fruit. We don't quite see the pain, but we can be assured that in any type of growing, there are growing pains.
Right.
Those are pains worth enduring, but surely you can't grow without that sort of pain.
Absolutely. Want to encourage you to follow Mike Todd. Get this man verified. I am Mike Todd on Instagram. You can follow Transformation Church on YouTube. And they've even started a more like vlog type channel. And so we want to encourage you to check that out on YouTube as well. All the links will be in the description. And we'll be back in just a moment with Top 5.
Amen.
I received a message yesterday from one of our Nucleus users. Her name is Jen, and it said, "The social is worth it." I was in the same boat, unsure of whether to upgrade, but I did. Glad I pulled the trigger. This is the best part. Grr, Brady's right again.
Yes.
Hashtag through the roof.
I saw that this morning. Like, she was angry that we were right and that we helped her.
The reference here is, of course, we added Daily Done For You social media to our Nucleus platform, which is our church website, builder and next steps platform for churches. And some people had to upgrade to the full Nucleus price to get it included.
Right.
And, we always say, like, if you use this content, you're going to get a huge boost
probably gonna work.
in
Yeah.
engagement.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are angry that that's true. And I don't really care as long as it's true.
Yes, yeah.
And, we talked earlier about Mike Todd back in the day. He's posting on social himself because he's the lead pastor and no one else has that, creative acumen. And so it's up to him. Maybe you're in the same spot. Let us take care of it for you with Nucleus Social. It's Daily Done For You social media. We'll send you the After Effects project files, the Photoshop files if you want to get real custom about it. And if you can't do that yourself, we can do it for you.
Do you want to know the best part?
I would love to know the best.
Okay, so we've got a free trial for Nucleus. Go to nucleus.church. You can sign up, no credit card, like just your name and your email. And with the free trial, you get 30 social posts. This
Probably
program we're
too
talking
many.
about. So you can have them, download them, and you can post them. So you don't just get to look at them. You can post them. And let us know in 30 days how this works for you. You can come back angry if it works, that's fine. But just let us know how it works for you because we're pretty confident it's gonna work for you.
Yeah, and we do the free trial because we don't want to just sit here and be like, our social posts are awesome.
No, give it a try.
If it works for you and you want to use it more, there are many more. A new one every single day.
Yes.
Nucleus.church is the place to sign up for that 30-day free trial. No credit card required. All we need from you is a name, an email, and a password.
Yeah.
So you can log in and
keep it secure.
download all of that content. You'll also get 30 free 4K stock footage files, 30 days free of Nucleus Web and Nucleus Sermons. And then the cost after that, if you want to keep going, it's just $99 a month
For
all of
everything.
that. All of that. Oh, and there's so much more good
Maybe
stuff
that's the
on
best
way.
part, the price. Maybe the price is the best part.
Well, we wanted to make it more accessible to as many churches as possible. And so if you are a smaller church or a startup church, we also have Nucleus scholarships.
That's the best part.
Although you should not
It's all
really,
the best part.
well, don't request one because we sent out an email announcing them to Pro Church Nation yesterday, and we got how many scholarships in the first hour?
No, a lot. It was
So,
amazing.
Right, right. And
we had people.
working
We
through
had
them.
people crying, like it was like happy tears. It was good. It was all good. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Nucleus.church. Now, in this episode, we talked about an organization in Transformation Church that knew who its target audience was.
Okay.
They knew who they were trying to reach. And they knew that it wasn't the traditional way that a lot of other churches had done it.
Sure.
A thriving organization that had gone against the grain and reached millennials in a way that previous churches in the area, organizations, couldn't. And in our top 5 today, we are highlighting another organization that did the same thing in an unprecedented success story. And that organization is LaCroix Sparkling Water.
Can we talk about the name before we get into it?
LaCroix rhymes with enjoy.
So this is an affront on like everything that we know, because growing up in Canada, you go to French class, that's what you do. And you know that LaCroix is not pronounced LaCroix, and you know that it actually has a meaning because it's a French word, like the belief, right? Like La Croix is
La Croix.
to believe. So LaCroix is an American invention, I guess.
Now, it's weird because America never does this. America never takes a word that isn't English and butchers it. It's not like they just take words and like, let's remove that vowel because it's too...
Right.
Wait, wow, I'm being very condescending towards America.
No,
I apologize,
but
America.
What's so outrageous is like, so I was exposed to LaCroix from my wife, my southern wife from South Carolina. She says, hey, try this sparkling water. It's flavored. It's called LaCroix. And I'm like, well, that's not how you say that, but that's okay.
It's called LaCroix, but...
Yeah. And so I just agreed to disagree until
Wow.
LaCroix, the company, comes out and says, LaCroix rhymes with enjoy. No, it doesn't. You can't just do that.
You been got. You done been got.
But it is the best flavored sparkling water in our shared opinion.
What do we need to know about the organization LaCroix?
LaCroix.
All flavors of LaCroix, gluten-free, vegan, and kosher. Why? Because it's water.
Water.
There's no meat, dairy, wheat, or nuts used in the product
Right.
or production of the product.
Sure, it's still water.
It's not a miracle product, except it is. Free of sugars, free of calories, free of sodium, free of artificial ingredients. It's non-GMO because it's water.
Sure.
LaCroix sparkling water, locally sourced water at various locations throughout the U.S. using a triple filtration system and bottling its water in-house at its own facilities.
Okay.
All LaCroix flavors derived from the natural essence oils extracted from the named fruit used in each of the LaCroix flavors. No sugars or artificial ingredients contained in nor added to these extracted flavors. How? It's a miracle product.
Well, you know what's funny about natural flavors? So like if you look at LaCroix, the ingredients are like water, natural flavors. Or like other health foods where it's like, this and natural flavors. And you look at that, it's like, oh my God, natural flavors. I feel so good about this. Until you like do just a quick Google search of like, well, what is allowed to be called a natural flavor? And there are a lot of things under that umbrella that are just super not natural.
Why are you doing this?
Sorry, I had to blow the whistle. But
Don't do this.
Hey, unashamedly, I'm a LaCroix drinker. I feel good about drinking it. No sugar, no cows, no unnatural flavors. Derived from essence
Essence.
of the named fruit.
What about this company? What do we need to know about LaCroix? 1981. The G. Heilman Brewing Company of La Crosse, Wisconsin, introduced LaCroix as one of the first anti-Perrier brands.
In what year?
81.
They've been kicking since 81?
Meant to appeal to sparkling water consumers
Sure, which you
who
and I both
thought
are.
that Perrier's snobbish positioning was a bit off-putting.
It is.
A
Perrier
little too highbrow.
is pretty
a little
snobbish.
too pretentious. Perrier, LaCroix marketed to its niche by imagining itself as an all-occasion beverage.
Okay.
Now, in 2002, LaCroix sought to rebrand, and they ended up settling on the design that was least favored by management. This is going to preach so hard, but it won over Target consumers in a landslide.
Sorry, Target consumers or Target consumers? Like the store Target, because that's where you buy LaCroix.
This is my week. Just stop. Listen about this amazing story of LaCroix. Mm-hmm. Against all odds. Against Perrier. Not Perrier, by the way. Okay, I never realized that. America couldn't take Perrier's pronunciation, so they made a French word, and we're like, we're not going to pronounce it that way. The whole not snobbish, pretentious thing was like, we're going to butcher a word. Wow. I'm realizing this live. Oh, we're going to do it live. Let's do it live.
Gosh.
Oh my goodness. So they do this rebrand in 2002.
Yeah.
And they go to management, and management's like, no. The look needs to be clean. Mm-hmm. It needs to be sophisticated, elegant. And the LaCroix rebranding team is like, well, we did a test with all of our consumers, and they like more like the radical, psychedelic, just throw colors everywhere.
Yeah.
Stop the scroll in the form of a can.
They're onto something.
And so the LaCroix leadership goes, look, we care about reaching this consumer base. We think it looks ugly, but if you say so, let's go for it. And the successful execution of the anti-Perrier strategy in all its forms has been a key factor enabling LaCroix to become one of the top sparkling water brands in spring of 2015, with sugary soda sales plummeting at a 30-year low in America. LaCroix saw a chance, an opportunity, sliver of a moment to expand their consumer base. What do? This is their moment. Subsequently launching a marketing campaign for the beverage on social media, specifically targeting who? Millennials, of course. Their marketing efforts have since helped position LaCroix with mainstream news outlets as a healthier alternative to sugary soda. Does my dentist say to stop drinking it 800 times a day? Yes. Will I listen? Never! Sorry, Dr. Burns.
I don't get it. How can a sugarless carbonated water pose a threat to your dental health? There's no sugar in it.
Enamel.
What about it?
Bubbles.
Oh,
Air,
okay.
not safe. Market research suggests LaCroix holds a 30% market share in sparkling water sales in the U.S. Double that of its main competitor, Perrier.
Amazing.
America loves it. They don't want the pretentious French brand.
Yeah.
They want the local mom and pop shop.
And it's incredible because you've seen other brands try and catch up. So Pepsi, a gigantic conglomerate of a company, launches Bubbly, which sucks. And have you ever had the lime one? Because it tastes like Pepsi. It's very strange. So Bubbly sucks. Perrier has started putting their pretentious sparkling water in tall, slim aluminum cans, getting rid of the glass bottles.
Where? Who did that?
LaCroix.
LaCroix. All LaCroix matter. 25 total flavors.
That's not a fact. All
Coconut
LaCroix
does
do
not matter.
No.
And it is terrible.
So
No
bad.
one wants it.
Also, do they have a plain flavor?
Yeah, it's called Pure.
Okay.
Did you know, actually, from their website, gluten-free, vegan, kosher, not
Are there any
GMO,
meat products in there?
no meat, dairy, or wheat products. All LaCroix matter. No, they don't. The top 5. Number 5, passion fruit. An excellent, crisp flavor of LaCroix. Not one you'd normally think to reach for, but I have a LaCroix fridge in my home. That's right, a LaCroix fridge.
Yeah.
What's in it?
As you do. LaCroix.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
Dozens and dozens of cans and flavors of LaCroix fill the fridge at the absolute best temperature to drink it at, extremely cold and chilled. And I find myself reaching for passion fruit more than I ever expected myself to.
I've always wondered about passion fruit, especially for North Americans, because like if I didn't live in Uganda for 6 or 7 months, I might not have like a frame of reference for passion fruit. There were fresh passion fruits everywhere. It quickly became one of my favorite fruits. So when I saw the passion fruit LaCroix, I was like, yes, please. But for other folks like who don't have any context for it, I wonder if, because there's 25 flavors and it's not a very common one, I wonder if it just gets overlooked. But it's so good.
I think that's one of the reasons why I like it, because I'm not super familiar with the fruit itself.
Yeah.
So I don't immediately take a sip and then compare it to my frame of reference for that fruit. Number 4, the first of 2 on the top 5, not the short and stubby LaCroix, the tall 12-ounce cans. What are
Okay.
they called? Curate, with some type of accent over the U.
Okay, not necessary.
Available in 8 packs.
As if they have to put a French accent on an English word. What are they doing?
They're holding 30% of the market share. What are you doing?
Yes, getting outraged.
Packaged
as a
in
French speaker.
boldly designed 12-ounce tall cans and make for the ideal on-the-go beverage, Alex.
Okay.
Drink LaCroix. Except this is Canada Dry.
Yes.
Plain.
Always. It always is.
Number 4, Mueller Pepino. Which flavor is that? One of your favorites, blackberry cucumber.
Yeah, this is, this is an all-time flavor for me.
It's unique. There's really nothing else like it
No.
in the 25 flavor lineup of LaCroix. Very sophisticated.
On its own, it's great. And let me tell you, as a mixed drink, it's even better.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Number 3 on the list. Ooh, it's a good one.
I'm getting nervous now.
Tangerine. Now, it's the Christmas season.
Yeah.
What is better than a tangerine around this time of the year? Why? Because it reminds me of a clementine.
Okay.
And there's no clementine LaCroix.
Sure.
Until there is,
Yeah.
I'm reaching for a tangerine.
And like, those two fruits are so like non-distinguishable anyway. So
it's
like,
all the same.
Yeah.
I could have put orange here, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Because tangerine is
Or they could have
slightly
put
better.
clementine on the can and you wouldn't have known any difference.
I would've gone for
Yes,
it.
Very good.
Number 2, the second instance of the Curate LaCroix. It's the ideal on-the-go beverage, Alex. Did you know that?
So I've heard.
Melon pomelo. Cantaloupe pink grapefruit. Woo!
How have I never had this one?
Outstanding.
Is this a new addition to your fridge?
No, it's just one of the 12-ounce
It's just
tall
there?
cans that you can only really get at Target. You can't buy it online. Canadian retail of LaCroix is a
it's a
little
shame.
hit and miss. I have drank this flavor 100,000 times. And you think surely I jest. I do not. All of these flavors have changed my top 5.
Okay.
You drink one, like back when it was just peach pear, basically.
Right.
You drink enough peach pear, and you're like, This one I have had repeatedly, and I've never tired of.
You need to hook me up with one of these.
It's a good one. It is not as good.
My problem is whenever I'm at your place, I'm either reaching for blackberry cucumber or passion fruit.
What's the problem? You need to expand your horizons.
Yeah. I really am getting nervous about how far you've expanded your horizons at number 1.
Okay, well, before I get into number 1, would you care to add some of your favorites? No necessarily particular order, just, some of
I've
your...
got the hottest take.
We already dismissed coconut, so...
Right, but that's not a hot take. Everyone knows that one sucks. It's key lime.
Oh, yeah, you like key lime.
Yeah.
We'll tell them about the first time we had
Well,
it.
the first time we had it, we were in the middle of the desert in
Moab.
Moab, Utah somewhere.
At the Hotel 6? Motel 6? Motel 6?
Yeah. Yeah.
Bad look. Tough
Not
look for
safe.
your guys.
But I don't even remember where we got it, but it was like that trip was like, it's desert out there. It's the wilderness, and we had been eating things that we don't normally eat. We had Subway in a gas station.
You got to do what you got to do.
And we got to the promised land of Moab where like we bought at that coffee shop, right?
Yeah, and we were like, what is that?
Yeah, we found a nice coffee shop. They had LaCroix. We're like, thank you, Jesus. And then we get served with key lime.
Key lime?
And so we had to try it, and it's good.
It tastes like a key lime pie.
Yeah.
The reason I don't love it is because it feels a bit too like dessert-like, and I'm
Right.
trying to get like a crisp, refreshing,
Sure.
hydrating beverage.
It's like it's almost like an after dinner, like
yeah.
like in the same way you might have ice wine, like a dessert drink. Key lime for a dessert drink.
Any other terrible takes you want to get off before I get to number one?
No, man.
Number one on the LaCroix top 5 list. The best flavor of LaCroix. Pronounced differently. App or ape? Apricot. The best LaCroix flavor of the 25.
I am so thankful that you said that and not something else, because
What did you think I was gonna
I
come
don't
up with?
know.
Cran Raz?
Yeah, something just offensive like
Basic.
that. But
Yeah,
apricot, it's paired in with the tangerine. Like it's so good. It is the perfect summer drink. It's not too sweet. It's not too apricot-y or apricot, as our southern listeners say for some reason.
God help them.
So good.
Absolutely amazing. Go get yourself a LaCroix this
Yeah.
weekend. Just a crisp. It's good for the summer. It's good for the holidays.
Yeah.
It's good for the cold. It's good for the warm, wherever you might be. And if you have any disparaging comments about my LaCroix choices,
Bring it on.
Feel free to send them full send into the comments on YouTube. Subscribe, like, notifications,
stuff. Just
rate
do
and
it.
review.
Ooh, thank
and if you
you.
think someone would benefit from this episode, make sure you send it to that friend in ministry, that pastoral companion.
And
of
we're going to
yours.
do more of these.
That's true.
Like sermon communication breakdowns of pastors, teachers.
That's right.
We have a list, but we're always looking to add more. So we'd love to hear from you. If you want to see us do some more of these, who would you like to see us break down?
Yeah.
We're getting good at like investigative research.
Well, we're getting there.
We're getting somewhere.
We're
So-
going in some direction.
Yeah, so let us
Hopefully
know in
it's
the
useful
comments,
to you and your church. That'll do it for this episode of the Pro Church Tools Show. We'll talk soon.